Erev Tov, everyone. In the enumeration of the ways, the stops that the Jewish people made in the desert that constitutes a bulk of Parshat Maseh, the Torah recounts for us once again the death of Aaron HaKohen. The original place that we find it is in Parshat Chukah, where the Torah tells us that Moshe was commanded to take Aaron to the mountain to Hor HaHor, and there to go up with his son Elazar, and to effectuate the transfer of the Kahuna Gdola from Aaron to his son Elazar, and that Aaron would pass away in his 123rd year, and he would be buried there. In this week's Parsha, the Torah tells us the day that Aaron passed away. The first day of the 5th month, which is the month of Mincha Maariv. So this Rosh Chodesh Friday is the, so to speak, the yahrzeit of Aaron HaKohen. So the Meforshim always tied Mincha Maariv, the fact that Tisha B'Av occurs in this month, and that it's to a certain extent not a fortunate month for the Jewish people. So the Gemara says that there's a connection between the death of Aaron and between the 9th day of Av, which is the day of the Churban Bayis. The Gemara says, Lahagi, to teach us, Shemitat Tzadikim, the death of the righteous, is like Domel is Sreifas Beis Elokeim. It's on the same scale, so to speak, as the Beit HaMikdash being destroyed. So how do we understand it? Everyone is mortal. So how is therefore the mortality of human beings comparable to the destruction of the temple, the loss of Jewish independence, etc., the beginning of the exile? But the Gemara says that that's the connection between the two. And that's why the Torah tells us the date that Aaron died. For instance, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu died on the 7th of Adar. But that's by tradition, that's not explicit in the Torah. And we don't know the day of death of Avraham Avinu or of Yitzchak or of Sarah or Rivka or Yaakov, Rachel and Leah. The Torah is not into that. And here by Aaron, we have a special day. But the Torah itself in the Psukim indicates to us the day of death. And because of that, that's why Chazal saw in it that the Torah wants to emphasize that the passing of a righteous person is connected to national tragedy and national disaster. The basis for this idea is that righteous people are what maintain the world. In other words, the world that we see and with everything, and it's not the prime minister that counts and not the experts and not, it's that they're righteous people in the world. The Jewish people have a legend that there are 36 righteous people. And because of these 36, the world exists. If you think you're one of them, you certainly aren't. The Gemara says, Rabbi Dosa said, Kol ha'olam kulo nizon b'shvil Chananya b'ni. The whole world economy, that people have what to eat, is because of my son Chananya. Of Chananya ben Dosa. And my son doesn't need more than some carob's fruit from 1 week to the next. So he was making dependent the whole world on one person, which is a Jewish concept. Rashi tells us by the Dora Mabu that the Rebbeinu Shalom Kaviyachal waited 7 days before the Mabul came. It rained, but the Mabul didn't come till 7. So Rashi says, based on Chazal, that the mourning for Meshuselach, as long as Meshuselach was alive, there was no Mabul in the world. Because he was a righteous person. So the righteous person is the protector of the world. He's the buttress against all of the disasters that should befall mankind because of the behavior of human beings, etc. In other words, the Midas Adin would wipe out the world. We could see it in our time, right? If Chas v'Shalom, there was a Midas Adin, we have nothing to say. So it's only the Midas Harachamim. That's what we say in Kedusha on Shabbos and Yontiv, Mimkomo hu yifen berachamim. Chazal say from his place of Midas Adin, he'll move and sit on Kisei Harachamim. So then the Yochonam, then the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to have mercy upon us. If he measured us by Midas Adin, there is no protection. So the power of a one righteous person, of a tzaddik, is inestimable. I always mention to you that the city of Sdom, and Amora, Adma, Tzvoim, those 4 cities were destroyed not because of the millions of evil people who existed there, which really was a terrible situation, but it was destroyed because there weren't 10 good people. They were missing 10 good people. The Rebbeinu Shalom agreed, Kaviyachal with Avram Avinu. Maybe we'll find 10 good people, the whole world, we got to let it continue. Even though the 10 good people apparently don't have an influence on the millions of people. Sdom is still Sdom. But the mere existence of good people, that itself is the buttress. That itself is the defense against everything. That's why Chazal said Misas Sadikim, if righteous people pass away, and implied in that is that we don't have replacements. So then it's like the Churban. That's like the destruction of the temple itself. Because the Beis HaMikdash was Megin on Klal Yisrael. V'shachanti b'socha. The Rabbon Shalom dwelt within us as long as there was a Beis HaMikdash. So the Shekhinah was with us. Even though in the time of the first temple and in the time of the second temple, it was not perfect. Jewish society was far from it. Just you'll hear the Haftorah this week of Shimu. And then we'll hear the Haftorah of Chazon. Wow. But as long as the Beis HaMikdash was there, so we still were protected somehow. It's when the protection fails, doesn't exist anymore. So then the disasters strike. There is no defense to that. So, for instance, we say on Shabbat, 2 Yikum Purkans. 1 Yikum Purkan is for the Rabbonim, the Dayanim, the Talmidei Chachamim that were in Bavel. Yikum Purkan was written, it's an ancient, made the time of the Gaonim, maybe even earlier, the time of the Amoraim, dates back to the Gemara, that's why it's in Lashon Aramis. What am I making a Mishabeach for something that doesn't exist? There's no Rabbonim in Iraq today. There's no Sanhedrin. There's no Talmidei Chachamim. The yeshivas of Bavel don't exist anymore. But it's a lesson to us that as long as there were Talmidei Chachamim, so then we can hope for the best. We can ask for brachas. It's not by accident that one of the first improvements that the reforms made to the prayer service before they learned about guitars is that they took out Yikum Purkan. You're sitting in 19th century Germany. What are you praying for Talmidei Chachamim in Iraq in the 2nd or 3rd century? But the Yikum Purkan comes to remind us of what does protect us. So I think that any fair observer of the story of the Jewish people will see that that is what preserved us. It's tzaddikim, and so that's why we have a bracha in Shmoneh Esrei. Ala tzaddikim, ala chasidim, al ziknei amcha beis Yisrael, al pleitas sofreim, those that are at least left. Pleitas. The Gerei HaTzedek. So take all of those, so then we can ask the Ribono Shalom that he should protect us. It's not a bracha for them. It's a bracha for Klal Yisrael, for us. It's the bracha that preserves us. And that's why we end the bracha, Misham Miftach LaTzadikim. The Ribono Shalom sees to it that there are tzaddikim in every generation. Chazal say, Rosh tzaddikim muotim, they're not too many. Omad rishoslon b'chol dor v'dor. So he gave a few, every generation has a few. That's a completely Jewish outlook on the world. And that's a completely accurate outlook on the world. And that's why the Torah mentions to us again, Misas Aaron, because as long as Aaron was there were Anonei Kovod, the Knaanim were afraid of us, there was no war yet. Aaron went away, Vayishma Knaani, that Aaron isn't there anywhere. Oh, I can go get him now. So the Torah, which is eternal, gives us certain insights into every time and every generation and every situation. Rabbi Hanania ben Akash Omer Rotza Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakos Yisrael L'ficha Chirva Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Siman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.